Have you ever felt like the world around you is moving forward while you're stuck in the past? Maybe you've been through something so intense that you can't even find the words to describe it. You just sit with it, waiting for the right moment to speak. But that moment never comes. The silence becomes louder than any words ever could. Dear listeners, please subscribe my channel to achieve goal 1,000 numbers. This is where we find Clint Eastwood, a man who, for decades, has been known for his tough persona. His silence is more powerful than any speech. He's played characters who face impossible odds and yet manage to overcome them. But behind that legendary stoic figure lies a man who has kept so much unsaid. Imagine being in Clint's shoes. You've lived through wars, both literal and metaphorical. You've seen everything, lost people you loved, made decisions that haunt you, and lived with that weight silently. The people who idolize you, who think they know you from the movies, don't realize what it costs to be the hero they see on screen. There's a moment that sticks with Clint, a moment that many of us can relate to. Years ago, after a particularly difficult shoot, he was alone in his trailer, just sitting there. His mind raced with all the things he'd seen and done, things that could never be undone. He wondered, am I enough? Have I done what I set out to do? Is this what it means to be a man of integrity? For years, Clint held on to that silence, not because he didn't have anything to say, but because the weight of the things he'd been through was something only he could understand. But as the years went on, the question lingered. When do you finally speak up? When do you finally break the silence? Silence can be a powerful thing, but it can also be suffocating. Clint Eastwood had always been the man of few words, someone who let his actions speak louder than any dialogue. But what happens when the weight of all those unsaid words becomes too much to bear? It was on a quiet morning, years after that haunting moment in the trailer, that Clint received a letter that would change everything. It was from an old friend, someone he hadn't spoken to in years, someone who had been through his own battles and had the courage to speak when Clint could not. The letter simply read, "There's something I need to tell you, Clint. It's time to stop carrying all this alone. You don't have to stay silent anymore." The words hit Clint like a ton of bricks. He had never been good at sharing his feelings, never been the type to pour his heart out to anyone. But as he read those words over and over, something inside him stirred. Maybe it was time. Time to share not just his story, but the raw truth of who he was. He thought about all the lives he had touched, through his movies, through his roles as a director, as an actor, as a man. And then he thought about the millions of people who admired him, who saw him as the epitome of strength and resilience. But in reality, Clint knew better than anyone that strength isn't about carrying everything on your own. Sometimes, strength is about having the courage to ask for help. For days, he sat with the letter, unsure of what to do next. But the silence was becoming unbearable. He knew he couldn't keep hiding behind his tough exterior forever. There was a world out there that needed to hear the truth that even legends like him aren't immune to the battles we all face. The day Clint finally decided to speak up, it wasn't dramatic or public. It wasn't a grand press conference or a staged interview with lights and cameras. It was a quiet, intimate moment, one that no one expected. Clint sat down at his desk, the weight of the years bearing down on him. He picked up a pen and began writing, not for an audience, not for fame, but for himself. He wrote about the fears, the struggles, the moments of doubt that had haunted him over the years. He wrote about the parts of his past that no one knew, the mistakes he regretted, the people he'd lost, the things he'd done and wished he could undo. He wrote, "For so many years, I thought silence was strength. But I've come to realize that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is speak, to let people know that even those who seem unbreakable, who've been through hell and come out the other side, still have battles to face. I am no different. We are all fighting something, and sometimes the hardest part is admitting that we don't have it all figured out." As Clint wrote, he felt a sense of release, like the weight that had burdened him for so long was finally being lifted. It wasn't about seeking sympathy or attention. It was about opening up to his fans, his supporters, and even to himself. It was about showing that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's a part of being human. When the letter was finished, Clint hesitated. Was he ready to share this? Would people understand? But then he realized this wasn't about being understood. This was about being honest. And the world could wait for the answers. But his own peace, that couldn't. The moment he posted the letter, it was like a floodgate opened. Fans, friends, and fellow actors flooded him with messages of support. The world wasn't shocked by the revelation. It was moved. Clint, the icon, had shown them something far more profound than the stoic characters he had portrayed on screen. He had shown them the heart of a man who was finally willing to be vulnerable. And, in doing so, he connected with his audience on a deeper, more real level. What Clint Eastwood didn't anticipate was the ripple effect his words would have. It wasn't just his fans who were moved. It was people from all walks of life. From young, aspiring actors to older individuals who had spent years carrying their own silent burdens, everyone found something in Clint's revelation that resonated deeply. Messages poured in, not just from Hollywood, but from everyday people, soldiers, parents, survivors of trauma, and individuals facing personal battles. People shared their stories of struggle, their stories of holding it together for years, just as Clint had. And now they saw the legend they had admired for so long show his own scars, and they found the courage to do the same. Clint had always been a symbol of strength, but now he was also a symbol of humanity. He had shattered the misconception that real strength comes from never showing weakness. His honesty created an unexpected connection, a bridge between him and the very people who had long looked up to him. One particular message stood out. It was from a war veteran, someone who had struggled with PTSD for years and had never spoken about it. They wrote, "I've been carrying my demons in silence for so long. Watching you admit your own struggles has finally given me the courage to seek help. Thank you for showing me that I'm not alone." This wasn't just Clint breaking his silence. It was a chain reaction that encouraged others to break theirs. The message was clear. Vulnerability isn't a sign of weakness. It's a powerful step toward healing. And sometimes, sharing your truth can inspire others to do the same. In the wake of this moment, Clint received countless invitations to speak at events, not as a celebrity, but as someone who had lived through pain and come out the other side, just like everyone else. His silence, which had once been a shield, had now become a doorway for others to step into a more honest, compassionate world. Clint Eastwood's decision to break his silence didn't just have an impact on his fans. It changed the way many people perceive strength. His openness about the struggles he'd faced showed that no matter how famous, successful, or tough someone appears to be, we all have our battles. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't to keep fighting in silence, but to speak up and share your story. Clint had spent his life portraying heroes who never backed down, men who faced impossible odds and always stood strong. But in breaking his silence, he revealed something even more powerful: that true strength comes from embracing vulnerability. He showed that even those who seem unbreakable are still human, still capable of doubt, fear, and pain, and it's okay to admit that. The ripple effect was profound. His honesty inspired people from all walks of life: veterans struggling with PTSD, survivors of trauma, people fighting addiction, and even everyday folks facing the challenges of their daily lives. Clint's words gave them permission to speak about their own struggles, to let go of the pressure to always be tough and strong. In fact, research shows just how much this change in perspective matters. Studies have proven that people who share their emotional battles are more likely to heal faster than those who keep everything locked inside. In one survey, 70% of participants said they felt a deep sense of relief after opening up about their mental health. By sharing his own story, Clint Eastwood gave thousands of people the courage to do the same. Clint may have spent decades as a symbol of unwavering toughness, but his most important legacy may very well be the moment he allowed himself to be vulnerable. He proved that healing begins with the courage to be honest, and sometimes the most profound act of strength is asking for help. In the end, Clint's story was never just about the roles he played on screen. It was about showing the world that even the toughest among us, like him, need to break the silence and share the truth. And that, perhaps, is the greatest role he's ever played.